This is News Talk 980 CKNW.
Well, the big leaders debate is coming up on CKNW, so keep it here. And one of the topics that dominated the election campaign yesterday, the Trump administration's announcement of 20% average tariffs on softwood lumber exports. And, you know, if the past disputes are any indication, these new tariffs could have a pretty significant impact on jobs and BC's economic prospects.
Now, it's not the only industry under fire here as well. We also have real estate numbers out from the first quarter. Prices show that activity's down. So let's bring in Michael Campbell. He's the host of Canada's #1 rated financial show. It's Money Talks.
All right, Mike, let's start with the softwood lumber dispute. A lot of people talking about that. We're hearing it would have a minor impact on the Canadian economy. No impact virtually in most of the provinces. But hey, what about BC?
Well, you're right. I've been hearing the same thing, but let's keep in mind that BC is by far the biggest softwood lumber producer, and we've got 60,000 jobs involved. Interesting stat is 1 in 16 jobs is forestry related in our province. And then you start looking at the rural communities, and you're hearing this number a bit, and it's correct. 40% of rural communities are dependent on forestry. We're talking about a $12 billion industry when it comes to the BC economy, about $22 billion for the Canadian. But, I mean, this is a big deal. Now, I might say, I've also heard people say, well, why are we so dependent on the U.S. market? Well, we actually have made some pretty good progress there. 10 years ago, we would have been about 80% of our exports went to the U.S., now only about 66%, but it's still the U.S. market, still the big gain. And, last time, as you alluded to, there was a major dispute. It was the early 2000s. I mean, 15,000 jobs were impacted, and it only took a few months. And I was listening to Unifor President Jerry Diaz. Now, remember, Unifor represents about 24,000 forestry workers. Well, he's saying that he could see as many as 25,000 jobs will be eventually hit. About 10,000 direct and about 15,000 indirect ones tied to the sector. So, my goodness. And by the way, this isn't the end of the story in terms of duty. You're absolutely right. It's about a 20% average duty. Some companies more, some less. Hey, they're going to throw another duty on this. It's the penalizing, the countervail, all of this stuff. But you know what? The bottom line is we're going to see duties, or tariffs rather, in the range of 30 to 35%.
Wow.
Now, these negotiations take place at the federal level. We heard local NDP leader John Horgan yesterday saying, look, if his premier on May 9th, he's going to be down there within 30 days telling the Trump administration how it is. But that's not really how this works. Like I said, it's a federal thing. Do we have any idea how long is that going to take to reach an agreement on this, Mike?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a federal thing. They're the guys who are going to negotiate this one. Now, I did read David Emerson, who was in charge of the file last dispute, and he's now the lead for the BC front, but just putting our point of view forward. He said he thinks maybe there's an opportunity to end this before the summer, but if not, it could take a lot longer. Here's one of the things that I found really disconcerting here. That keep in mind, before that, it was October 12th that the old agreement sort of expired. Well, Canada had already made 12 separate proposals to the U.S. The U.S. had made 3 proposals, so it's not like anybody was sleeping on this file, but we didn't get anywhere there. And I'm worried about Mr. Trump himself. He's Mr. Bombast, but let's face it, his platform was very clear. If he thinks that American jobs are in jeopardy, he's going to be the champion of that. Now, it's not very sophisticated what he's saying, but the bottom line is, what if he's looking for a political win here by just simply saying, see, I got us a better deal. Those Canadians, and he's been saying it regularly, have beat us in the trade deal. It's a terrible deal, whether it's NAFTA, supply management with dairy, or with lumber. So I'm a little worried about the sort of the political atmosphere we're operating in.
Yeah, a lot of rhetoric. And if this drags on for any time, our workers get hurt, the Canadian economy takes a hit, and in the meantime, the U.S. consumer pays more.
Yeah, this is the big thing to get. Anytime, we talk about protectionism, we got a lot of supporters, protecting Canada's economy. They're against NAFTA. It's that every time you do that, it's the consumer that gets hit. In this case, sure, raise tariffs that will hurt our workers and our business. But you know what? This is not a win for U.S. consumers. It may be for the small lumber lobby, but not for consumers down there.
All right, let's change gears here. Talk a little bit about real estate. It's likely going to be a hot topic tonight in the leadership debate, which is on air on CKNW from 6:30. Talk us through the slowdown. What are you seeing? You analyze this on a daily basis, don't you?
Yeah, I sure do. I mean, let's remember what we tried to do. So last February, a year ago February, we put in this new extra property purchase tax if you bought a home above $2 million. Then we followed that up with the foreign buyers tax at the end of July. Then the feds followed up with with all those new mortgage eligibility rules, well, we've got an industry slowdown right now. I mean, you look at the first quarter, you got about $7 billion less in sales when you talk about BC, and most of that in Vancouver, down about $6 billion. Yeah, we do have prices down 9% to $992,000. I'm not sure what we've accomplished yet in this. I mean, do we want a bigger price decline? And if so, what are the implications? I mean, don't we need to get about 30 or 40% if we're looking at the direction? You know, the demand side is the direction for affordability. I just think you better be careful what you wish for. Do we really want to derail it by curtailing demand through higher taxes? I think that's a really dangerous game. That's very different than saying we want to alleviate affordability by increasing supply. Well, that would add to the employment and GDP. We're hearing like there's no implications if we derail that industry, and that would be very, very wrong.
So what impact do you think a slowing real estate market and then this softwood lumber dispute is going to have on the provincial election?
Yeah, I think what it demands from all three parties is a rethink of their election platforms. You know, we always hear about costing these. Well, you know what? I'm not a big fan of that because they present them with certainty. They have to make a ton of assumptions when they so-called cost their platform, and that's why they're always wrong. I mean, keep in mind how tough it was to sort of anticipate whether you're talking about, the fall in the loonie, the fall in oil, the subprime mortgage crisis, and all of that dramatic impact on our economy. I'm not knocking them for not anticipating it for governments. I'm saying that tells you how tough it is to anticipate stuff. So my point is, every one of those party platforms, when they say they're costed, boy, that should be taken with a giant lump of salt, enough to give you a heart attack. But what in fact should happen is they should be revisiting their platforms and their costing, because government revenues can be challenged here.
Michael Campbell is going to be back on your radio Saturday morning with a new edition of Money Talks. Mike, thanks so much for our midweek Money Talk report.
My pleasure.
Vancouver's News, Vancouver's Talk. This is News Talk 980 CKNW.